Welcome into the Cubs Recap Podcast here on YouTube and anywhere where you get your audio editions of podcasts with my partner, Gordon Wittenmeyer. I'm David Kaplan. We have a special guest today. Todd Rosiak is the Brewers beat writer for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. He covers basketball. He's all over the place. All right, Todd, Gordon and I have been sparring about the Cubs and how good they might be able to be defensively. Not sure they have enough offense, but nobody has the pitching the Milwaukee Brewers have. So how good is your baseball team this year?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on it, Dave. It's pitching or bust for this team, and obviously the health is going to be the biggest issue for this team. Last year, we saw the bad side of that. Pretty much every starter in that rotation, 6 of the 7 guys that wound up taking the ball regularly spent time on the injured list. Corbin Burns was the only one who was not injured, and he obviously had a really good year. But it's a battle-tested rotation. It's a very talented rotation. You've got a former Cy Young winner in Corbin Burns. You've got a guy in Brandon Woodruff who finished in the top 5 a few years ago in the balloting. And you've also got a couple of lefties now with Eric Lauer, Wade Miley, who you guys obviously remember well too. So it's a good mix of veterans. It's a good mix of talent. You've got righties, you've got lefties, and most importantly, they've also developed some depth. That rotation depth was really what killed them last year with the injuries. Now they've got what they feel is probably 3-4 other solid guys who, if injuries do hit them again this year, that they will be able to rely on and not really miss much of a step. So definitely the strength of the team.
Hey, Todd, I've got this theory, and I'm not sure Cap agrees with me. If I'm wrong, you tell me I'm wrong. I might listen to you. So my theory is if the Cubs are going to be afraid of a team in the division, it should be the Brewers even more than the Cardinals. For a lot of the reasons you've already said, we're talking about that pitching staff, but specifically, Burns is coming in after losing an arbitration case. He's got a chip on his shoulder personally. Woodruff said the whole team has a chip on their shoulder. Correct me if I'm wrong, for missing the playoffs for the first time in, 5 years, 4 years, 5 years? By one game. And you could, in fact, you could pinpoint it if you want, the series where they got swept by the Phillies. They win the series, they're in the playoffs. So that is a team that seems to me to have some kind of purpose in addition to all that pitching, where, the Cardinals are strong in a lot of places and they don't, other than the corner infield spots, they don't really make your eyes pop. So what do you think of that theory?
Yeah, no, Gordon, I think you're spot on. If there was one kind of overriding theme that I think I gathered from my first 3 weeks down in spring training was, it's a motivated team to get back to the playoffs. And they certainly heard a lot of the, aside from the internal disappointment, they certainly heard a lot of the external disappointment as well from the fans. They're all human. They read social media. They know what's going on out there. And, for better or worse, this is a fan base that has suddenly become spoiled. Let's be honest. This was a franchise that was terrible for decades. And then, Mark Adonazio buys the team, slowly but surely starts investing in it. And beginning in 2018, they go on this run where they're in the playoffs, every year for 4 years. That's unprecedented territory for the Brewers franchise. So, the expectations, the bar has definitely been raised for sure. And you've got guys, who want to get back to that. Obviously, you mentioned the Burns thing. He's somebody that's going to definitely be motivated this year, from an individual standpoint as well as a team standpoint. And then you've got guys like you mentioned, Woodruff. There are a few new faces on the team, but those guys have things to prove as well. So it's definitely going to be a motivated group, and to a man, I would say, of the veterans and the returnees that I spoke to when I was down in Arizona, they want to get back, and that's the number one goal is to get back to the playoffs.
Okay, so my friend and partner, Gordon Wittenmeyer, we spar a lot because we disagree on a lot.
I love it.
I look at your team, pitching-wise, no question, really good. My issues with the Milwaukee Brewers from an outside perspective is when you've had opportunities to push your chips in the middle, ownership has not done that. They've had a chance at times where you go, boy, they got a lot of talent. They got kids in the minors. We're all in. Let's try to win. And I don't see it. And I question your everyday lineup offensively. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you're also right in the ballpark with those two thoughts. I'll kind of go over, when I was talking about the fan base, I'll kind of go over the last, let's say, since the trade deadline last year. Everybody remembers the Hader trade, right? Yep. So this is kind of like this has been the narrative of the Milwaukee Brewers since the Hader trade. You have trading away the best closer in baseball in the midst of a playoff run. You missed the playoffs in the
by one game. By
one game. You trade Hunter Renfroe and Colton Wong, two of your best players in the offseason, and essentially don't bring that quality of player back. You spend no money in free agency. Craig Counsell is in the final year of his contract, so you want to call him a lame duck manager, go ahead. Corbin Burns blasts the franchise because of what happened in arbitration. You open up the spring training and you've got injuries to two key players already in Aaron Ashby and Tyrone Taylor. And then you've got a big fight going on behind the scenes regarding public money, tax money going to the ballpark to try to put that in for internal improvements and so forth to keep the team in place. So this is the narrative that's been going around the team since the trade deadline last year. It has not been good. And Dave, to talk to your point specifically, there is a narrative that the Brewers have not been as aggressive as they have been in years past in terms of spending money in free agency. They've got a number of top prospects, as you noted. It's probably unlikely that any of them, or maybe one of them, will start this season on the big league team because of service time manipulation and that sort of thing. So it's just been a bad buzz around this franchise since the Josh Hader trade. And then you throw in the fact that the offense did struggle. It's been really a struggle for this team offensively since 2020. The pandemic year, obviously, they've never really been able to get back on track. They've been a very homer reliant team, not a lot of on base, struggle to score runs. Average is not great. However you want to put it, it has not been a consistent, cohesive lineup, and a lot of that can be traced back to Christian Yelich and his struggles as well. But the offense,
because let's be fair, that is one place where they went all in, but you expected to get Ryan Braun in his prime back, from the other side of the plate, but nonetheless, and you didn't. You got a regular guy.
Right. Yeah. It's you look back at that Yelich deal, and at the time when they signed it, they were absolutely doing the right thing. He was signing an under market deal to stick with the franchise for the long term, and it looked great. But since that day, it's been nothing but a train wreck. And every year, hope springs eternal, as we like to say in spring training. Every year at the start, the narrative is, can Christian Yelich not even get back to MVP status, but get back to, let's just say, the Miami Marlins Christian Yelich. I think the Brewers would be thrilled with that. And to this point, he has, and he showed good signs last year. We'll see if a long off season away from baseball this off season will help him as well. But offense, definitely a question. And if you can get that even a little bit closer to the norm, I think that the Brewers with the pitching definitely are going to be right in the mix with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think I've given the Cubs a lot of crap. For good reason, for payroll slashing and running scared from pandemic losses and not acting like a big market franchise when they're one of the elite revenue teams. And all that's true. But here's the other side of that coin is that nowhere on the baseball landscape is it like it was in the 90s. So when these small market teams like the Pirates or the Brewers start spewing their narrative about, well, we don't have as much money as the Cubs or the Cardinals. That might be true, but they got plenty of money. They got plenty of money to keep their players or to add. And I think that a lot of these owners are trying to use these narratives that they know they've been able to sell in the past to line their pockets, to continue to line their pockets as revenues go up for everybody. So I just wanted to get that off my chest because that pisses me off when I look at the whole landscape of the game. But you said something that I'd like you to explain, please, and that's, you said Burns blasting the club, and there might be a lot of our listeners who don't know what happened, what he says happened in that arbitration case. Can you take us through that?
And by the way, Todd, if I'm the Cubs, I'm all in on Corbin Burns to front my rotation.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy right now, Corbin Burns, that when he hits free agency, I don't see there's any way that the Brewers could sign him to an extension at this point. This is the guy that's going to command north of $300 million, and rightfully so. He's been ridiculous. But, basically the Brewers have been very good over the years, especially under their last couple regimes, front office regimes, at avoiding arbitration hearings. And this season, it looked like this offseason, it looked like they were trending in the right direction. They basically came to agreements with everybody other than Corbin Burns right up to the deadline. They continued talking after, but just could not come to an agreement. So they wound up taking it to a hearing. Essentially, they were arguing over $750,000.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
Especially if you can split the difference. Now you're talking even less.
Yeah, exactly. And that was Corbin Burns's whole argument was basically like, we're really haggling over this much money. And for him, it's a pride thing. I get that. I totally get that. Is he worth that extra $750? Absolutely. But the Brewers, for whatever reason, and you may find other teams that stick to this narrative of, hey, we have a process. This is why we go to arbitration. It is what it is. And hopefully it's water under the bridge. I don't necessarily think that's so. Corbin Burns, I think, caught everybody off guard. I know he caught the organization off guard. When he spoke to myself and two other reporters in the aftermath of that, and from his first about 20 words out of his mouth, we're like, oh boy, this is going to be good. And he let loose with both barrels for about 8 minutes, and very, very quickly thereafter, it got ugly as far as public perception toward the Brewers. So. He said his words were, I don't know if the relationship can be repaired. We'll see. And that puts the Brewers in a bad spot too, because let's say this season, they fail to be competitive, or they have a bunch of injuries, or they just flat out underachieve. You have Corbin Burns, you have Brandon Woodruff, you have Willie Adames, 3 guys who are going to command huge hauls in the trade market if you decide to trade them. What do you do with those guys? What do you do with Corbin Burns? On the flip side, if you're competitive, you got to keep them this year. And then what if you're competitive going into next year and you feel like you have your chances to compete again next year? There's a chance that the Brewers could walk away getting nothing for any of those guys if they decide that that's the right thing to do. So they're in a trick box right now, and it's not going to be easy to think their way out of it. But there's no doubt that a motivated Corbin Burns is going to be a good thing for the Brewers. I just don't think it's the motivation is there for the right reasons, I guess, if the team would have its say.
Correct me if let me just go back to one thing. Tell me if I'm wrong on this. Did Burns not say that when they were in that hearing, and we know these hearings can get ugly at times because the teams have to tell you why the player's not worth it. This guy won a Cy Young. He's been playoff pitcher for him. Didn't he say they essentially blamed not making the playoffs in large part on him?
Yeah, so that's interesting. We fleshed that out a little bit, and I think it's more the perception of the player. We know what goes on. Like you said, teams have to talk down their players. The players' reps have to talk them up, and it becomes this kind of ugly, nasty thing. But the bottom line is this: Corbin Burns perceived it that way, so that's the way it came. That's the bottom line. Is he took it that way? That's how he felt it was said. That's how he felt it was meant. That's how he took it. So I don't know necessarily that I believe that the Brewers came out and said, "Hey, this guy is the reason why we didn't make the playoffs. I think that, on its face would be downright ridiculous. But again, it's how Corbin Burns took it. That's the most important thing. And, whatever a guy needs to motivate himself, he took that and ran with it for sure.
What's interesting about this is that the teams get a lot of pressure from MLB and the commissioner's office on this stuff.
They do a lot.
They get told what the value is, what the value in the arbitration market is for these guys, and hold your place on this. And then now there's buzz that some of these arbitrators are afraid to get fired by the owners.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that they can get fired by the union as well for no cause. But I suspect, right? Tell me what the perception in Milwaukee is on this. If you've got teams falling in line with the commissioner's edicts on this, and we see the file and trial policies across baseball now, there's been a lot of arbitration cases that we go, what the hell, for that amount of money? And this is one of them. If teams decide to follow the commissioner's guidelines / edict on this, don't the smaller market clubs potentially get hurt worse that have developed their player and want to maintain the relationship with him and extend him, compared to the Cubs that can say, well, screw you, Kyle Hendricks, if we want to say that, and we'll just go get John Lester.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. And you want to be able to stay on the good side of these guys, and hopefully if everything works out and you're dealing with the right agent and the players in the right frame of mind, maybe you can parlay that into a team-friendly extension at some point before these guys hit free agency, keep them around a few more years. But it's so incredibly frustrating to small market fans who continually take a Brewer fan, for instance. They basically just look at their star player, their team as a farm system for their star players. You develop guys like Corbin Burns, you develop guys like Brandon Woodruff. They traded for Willy Adames, but he's clearly had his best years with the Brewers, and whatever they've been doing with him has worked well. But you just know at the end of that run, you have no chance of keeping these guys, and it's just like this hopeless cycle. So that in turn forces the Brewers to do what they did with Josh Hader. You want to stay ahead of the game. You want to get something back for him, but then it becomes a timing issue and everything. So it's absolutely right. It becomes very ugly. It becomes very frustrating for fans to see this. And they don't. I can absolutely say that Brewer fans, by and large, do not buy the small market narrative anymore. They've seen Mark Atanasio pay money in the past. They've had the biggest payrolls and so forth. They've also been incredibly frustrated hearing these stories that are coming out about Mark Atanasio buying a minority ownership stake in a Premier League team, soccer team in England.
It's not Chelsea, is it?
No, not Chelsea. Buying, spending exorbitant amounts of money on sports memorabilia and stuff. It doesn't play. And of course, he's free to spend his money however he wants. But to a fan, seeing, you're hearing the franchise saying we want to do everything we can to win a World Series, but then the reality is they're not spending like fans think they should, and then the owner's buying these other things too. It's conflicting messages. So again, I just go back to the whole narrative and the whole feeling around this franchise. I grew up here. I've followed the Brewers since I was, a little kid, and I can never remember as much discontent and as much dissatisfaction about the team, in 40 plus years. It's amazing. And we're still talking about a team that is very much in position to make the playoffs this year.
Man.
Yeah, you're talking about Norwich City is the soccer team. He's going to own 16% of it. I want to go back to something you said. You're standing there with two other people, and there's Corbin Burns, Cy Young winner, big name guy. And we've all been there. I've been doing this north of 30 years. You guys have been doing it forever. When you get an athlete or an executive or a coach, and 20 seconds in, you're like, oh my God, this is gold. Like, take me back to what's your favorite one, both of you, that you can remember? Because I remember some doozies.
Gordon, I mean, you have way more experience than I do. I've been in the business for 30 years. This is my 13th year covering ball. Gordon, you go ahead. I'm sure you have better stories.
Well, I got one from when I covered the Angels that still stands out to me. That was in '99, and Mo Vaughn was in his first year on that club, and there was a cultural divide in the clubhouse that was kind of a couple of guys were more like Mo, and he had a little bit of an edge. He was an East Coast guy, and there was a lot of the holdovers that were kind of Southern California minds. And they were a very talented club. A lot was expected of them, and they weren't playing well. And this was either right before or right after the All-Star break. We were in Cleveland, and there was a benches clearing brawl, and Mo wasn't in the game, and he was seen on camera later, like kind of half clothes, like he just thrown on his clothes to come out of the clubhouse through the dugout to join, and then didn't. But by then, you could take that however you want. By then, most of it was over, if not all of it. But Troy Percival, the night before, that night, said and raised his voice doing it, basically called out Mo without calling him out by name for some guys not being there for the other guys. And then the next day, a couple of us went up to Mo in the clubhouse and asked him about it because he wasn't there at that point that night. And he ripped the crap out of Percival out loud so everybody in the clubhouse could hear it, and just kept, he just kept going on and on. Me and the other guy just looked at each other. We didn't ask a question. We just, for probably 10 minutes, he just railed. And I this, I that, and other people, and this guy, and gonna say that.
The best.
Say it to my face. And he just ripped the crap out of it.
That's awesome. So while you were talking, I was thinking back, and the thing that stands out most to me was my first year, going into my second year covering the Brewers. We all remember the Ryan Braun thing with the suspension and all that stuff.
You mean with the FedEx guy?
Yeah. So this is my first spring training. I was actually covering Marquette in 2011. My first year on the Brewer beat was 2011, so I missed spring training that year because Marquette got into the Sweet 16. 2012 was my first spring training covering the Brewers, and this is when Braun is first going to address all this stuff that has been going on, and got off on the technicality, blah blah blah. So they actually in Maryvale, Gordon, you've been there many times. They have a podium on the infield grass. They have chairs lined up on the infield grass and everything. It was crazy. So Ryan Braun steps to the podium, and my role, I was working with Hodricourt at that time. So he's doing one thing. My role at that point is I've got my laptop on my lap, and I'm basically live tweeting, live blogging this stuff, his comments, and it's going live on our website. And there was a narrative going around about Braun, or a rumor, while all this suspension stuff was going on, that let's just say he had a sexually transmitted disease, and the medication that he was taking caused this false positive. This was some rumor that was out there. So as Ryan Braun is standing at the podium and he's talking about this, and he's justifying all this stuff and what happened, he literally stopped, at some point during his speech says, and I also would like to go on record as saying, no, I do not have any sexually transmitted diseases. And then goes on, and I'm like, is this real life? Is this really happening here? I literally typed that out. Ryan Braun says he has no sexually transmitted diseases. So maybe I shouldn't have even brought this up, but that's the thing that really came to mind, is like, I cannot believe this is happening right now.
We got to put that in the headline on this podcast.
Yeah.
Can we promote this?
I had a coach who I knew from my basketball days walk up to me and go, hey, we just made a trade with the Bulls. Don't tell them I gave it to you. It was a monster deal. It's like 9 players. I called John Paxson, the GM of the Bulls. He's like, we didn't make a trade. I said, well, I'm going to report it in 10 minutes. And he said, all right, how did you get this? And so, to make a long story short, the trade went down, the whole deal. Yeah, the coach who had given it to me actually used to be the head coach at Marquette, Kevin O'Neill.
Yeah,
and Kevin was in my wedding. He's my closest friend. So I got this story, and Paxton's like, who gave it to you? I can't tell you that. And a month later, he comes up and goes, the guy was in your GD wedding?
Nah.
So, yeah, you can't get a better source than that. All right, so let me ask you from your seat, what do you think of our club, the Cubs?
Much improved. I don't. You're betting on Cody Bellinger, obviously having a comeback season, be motivated, 1-year deal and all that stuff. I like the Tyone signing. Obviously, Dansby Swanson, he's going to solidify that position for the Cubs for a number of years. Just way more competitive in general. And I like looking at it from the small, the micro perspective of just covering the Brewers. The better the Cubs are, the better that rivalry is. I think it's great. I really. It's such a great series to cover every time the Cubs are in town or the Brewers are down there. I know Brewers fans get so annoyed with all the Cubs fans coming up to Milwaukee, Wrigley North, and all that stuff, but that's what makes it fun. The only way I think it could be a little bit better would be if Wilson Contreras was still there, because he became public enemy number one of Brewer fans.
Yeah, pincushion number one.
Yeah.
Wait till the Cardinals come rolling in.
Oh my God, yeah.
Well, and then it's cool too, because you have William Contreras now catching for the Brewers too, so you've got all that interplay going on as well. I just think in general the Cubs should be much improved, and like I said, it's going to be nothing but good for the Brewers and Cubs rivalry. It's a shame that it's only 2 games, or 2 series at each ballpark now with the different schedule. But of course, they had to make it opening day, that opening series at Wrigley for the Brewers.
Yeah, right.
Brutal.
That's so stupid.
Absolutely brutal.
Just flip it. Play it in Milwaukee. That's so stupid.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
It makes no sense to me.
Todd, we talked about my theory on who the Cubs should be afraid of among the other 2 teams. I think we can eliminate the Reds and the Pirates from this discussion for this year. But who should or who are the Brewers more afraid of? Are they actually afraid of the Cubs?
I don't know that fear would be the right word, but I definitely think that the moves that the Cubs made in the offseason has got the Brewers' attention for sure. This is I don't know how you guys view it, but it definitely looks like they've come out of that rebuild phase, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
I guess it depends on how they do this year.
Right.
They're all short-term guys too.
But they are back to spending money again and trying to get some marquee players back on